Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for another Build Your AutoCAD IQ. You're joining us here today for another series, another of the Third Dimension series presentations. This means you should be in AutoCAD, full AutoCAD. If you're joining us in LT, feel free to stick around, but these features won't be available in there. Let's see, so model documentation in AutoCAD 2017 will be the topic. Alex Buller will be our presenter, and I will be co-presenting here, moderating. And we'll also be joined by Noman Misorawala, one of our expert elites. Okay, so I am Victoria Studley. I'm an Autodesk Technical Support Specialist in our Manchester, New Hampshire office. Alex is a technical support specialist as well. He joins us from our Boston, Massachusetts office. And Noman is, again, one of our Autodesk expert elites. You might recognize him from the AutoCAD forums. And he's based out of Westchester, Ohio. So today we'll be talking about model documentation, how to take your 3D models and quickly display them in a 2D documentation mode that helps you detail out all of the parts and update those as you evolve your model. Before we get started, you can feel free to leave your questions in the chat window and we'll try to answer them throughout the presentation. This session will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. You'll receive links to that in the registration reminder and the post-webinar survey. We will also post that the links in the chat window, so take a look down there. And then if you joined us for one of these in the past, we're going to host another Autodesk Answer Day where you join us in the forums and ask us any question you have about AutoCAD, Fusion 360, or Inventor. It'll be technical support specialists, people from QA and development, people from all over Autodesk, as well as our expert elites. So join us in the forum all day long, 6 a.m. Pacific till 6 p.m. Pacific time. This will be in English and German for AutoCAD and Inventor. And you can find more information by following the link up there on the screen. If you need the link, you can download the dataset afterwards, which is a link that we'll provide in one of the post emails after the presentation. Throughout today's presentation, if you have any recommendations for topics that we haven't covered, things that you want to hear about 3D modeling, solids, surfaces, meshes, any kind of 3D modeling workflows, anything to do with rendering, materials, lights, cameras, the cloud rendering, anything like that, post those ideas in the chat window or post them in the follow-up survey and we'll try to incorporate them into some of our future webinar sessions. Okay, and here's some housekeeping things. You'll have this afterwards. I won't spend too much time here, but here are some of our upcoming presentations. Intro to AutoCAD Civil 3D, external references, working with data extraction, and then laser cutting in AutoCAD 2017. There are some links here to view the previous presentations and download the data sets. You can also join the AutoCAD Customer Council, or if you know somebody who would enjoy these webinars, go ahead and send them to the landing page. The link's over there on the right. And here are some of those Autodesk Knowledge Network resources. And let's get right to it. So this week's agenda includes model documentation. So we'll teach you how to create some base views and then create sections and details from those views, and then show you how to modify and update them as your model evolves. So before we jump in and I turn this over to Alex, I'd just like to run a couple of quick polls. So let me find those. Where are we? Okay, so the first thing we want to know is this your first AutoCAD or Autodesk Help webinar? So if you've joined us before, welcome back. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We're glad to have you here. We're looking forward to presenting some interesting information for you today. If there are other topics you're interested in, feel free to check out that YouTube playlist that we have with all the previous presentations, or join us for some of the future ones we've got going. So I'll close this poll out here and take a look at those results. Looks like 2% of you are here for the first time, so welcome, and 98% are joining us again, so welcome back. All right, I'll hide that and take a look at the next one here. So which AutoCAD-based application do you use? Do you use AutoCAD, AutoCAD LT? Do you use one of our verticals like architecture, MEP, AutoCAD electrical or mechanical? Do you use some of our infrastructure programs like Civil 3D or MAP? Or do you use something completely different? Something Autodesk or not Autodesk? Tell us what you use. Okay, so I'll close the poll out here and show you those results. So it looks like most of you are in AutoCAD, about 15% in LT, about a quarter of you in some of our AutoCAD verticals, and 17% in our infrastructure programs. All right. All right. Okay, 2 more here. Oh, sorry about that. All right. So have you joined us for one of the Autodesk Answer Days? We've had 2 for AutoCAD so far, or if you've been to one of the ones for our other products, let us know. If you've been to one, or if you plan to join us for the one at the end of October, it'll be on October 27th. Let us know if you plan to join us. Bring your best questions and we'll join you there and be happy to answer them. Leave that open for a couple more seconds here. All right, and let's close that out. And there are those results. So it looks like most of you have either planned to join or have joined us in the past. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. All right, last poll, I promise, and then I will turn this show over to Alex. So here we go. We would like to know, have you used, how often do you use AutoCAD's model documentation tools? Do you use them all the time? Have you tinkered with them a little bit? Have you never touched them before? Have you maybe opened them once and decided they were too much or not what you were looking for and closed it immediately and never looked back? All right. Hopefully we can teach you some interesting things about them today, and you'll start using them in your workflow. Okay, so let's close that out, and I'll share those results with you quickly. Looks like most of you have never used it or maybe tinkered with it a little bit. And for the pros out there, hopefully we'll have a couple of tips and tricks up our sleeve. Okay, so I will hide this. And without further ado, let me turn this over to Alex. And Alex, it's all yours.
All right, Victoria, thank you so much for that great introduction. So again, very excited to be here to show you guys all about model documentation. We're going to be referring to it as VIEWBASE. Essentially, that's kind of the functionality that we call it in CAD. And I honestly think this is a really, really powerful tool within AutoCAD, especially when it comes to documenting in, for example, like a report, whether it be internal or external. We have the means of presenting the models that we're working on in a way that simplifies it and makes it very clear and transparent and succinct as to what's actually going on. Like when we're working with these models day in, day out, we know exactly what's going on. We know what we're looking at. But on occasion in a report, it's got to go outside to someone who might not be as intimately familiar with that model. It really needs to make sense to them as well. So this is one of the tools that we have within AutoCAD to allow us to do that. The other cool thing is a lot of this functionality exists in other product. We got it in Inventor and in Fusion, and again in CAD, so it's pretty cool that we have this cross-product functionality going on. So I think the best thing to do is really just to get started here. And Victoria, I just want to confirm you can see my screen? Awesome. All right. So here, I got a very, very simple model. I mean, it probably doesn't get much simpler to this. We got two blocks, 1 and 2. Now, actually, before I get going too far, I just want to let you guys know it really doesn't matter what workspace you're in. It's the same functionality is going to be present no matter what. And right now, I'm in the realistic view. And this is what we see. I could spin around. We got our two blocks. And you can see they're overlapping. I can't really tell what's going on the inside. I can get a sense of what's going on if, for example, I went to the 2D wireframe. So you can see that there's more to the model than just meets the eye when we're in conceptual or realistic. But I want to present that to someone. I want to show them what's going on with this model. Enter VIEWBASE. There are essentially two ways to get this started. One is from the model. If I type in VIEWBASE, I'll be presented with two options. One, I can select from the model space, and two, I can select from a file. So if I started going down this road, I could start clicking away at things in a model space, or I can bring things in from an Inventor file. Now, I'm going to take a step away from this for a second. And I want to show you the second way of doing this. I'm going to go to a layout. And you'll notice up at the top, we have a new option here, layout. And over here under create view, we have a whole bunch of options here. And the first one you'll see is base. And if I click on that, I got those same two options that I saw in the model space. I got from model space or from file, or in this case, from Inventor file. If I select from model space, you'll see that I have my two blocks presented to me. It's essentially going to be taking everything from the model space and trying to take all that information and put it into our first, or what is known as a parent view. Now if I click on the screen, I'll be presented with a couple of options here, or a few. I'm going to kind of scan over a couple of these, or I'm going to pass over them rather. But the one that you want to be aware of right off the bat is the orientation. If I select orientation, these are my perspectives that I can set my parent view base to. It'll default to front, but I can change it to the top, bottom, left, right, all kinds of different options. I'm going to actually exit out of that, and I just want to jump back into the model space to make that clear. So if I'm looking at my model, remember if I created that parent view, it defaulted to front. So in my little view cube, if I hit front, this is essentially what I'm going to be getting for my first parent view base. And I can do it to top through those options. I'm going to go back, going to start that process again from model, and I'm going to click it there. So say I just want to start with the front. I'm going to hit enter, and as I move my mouse around, you will see that it is going to create these different view bases or different perspectives of my model. And I can go around and I can click away, make a nice circle of all these different perspectives of my model. So these are all individual views. And already, it's a little confusing now, but already we're getting a sense of what this model looks like in terms of three-dimensionality in a 2D layout. Something that could just be printed and stuck into a report. We're now actually making sense of what it is that we're seeing. Now, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete all this stuff. And I want to show you what that looks like if we were to start this process back from the model space. So again, from the model space, if I just typed in ViewBase. I get those same two options. I'm going to select model. So unlike starting from the layout, if I did it from the model space, I'm actually going to be prompted to select different parts of my model. So say I only select one block. I'm going to hit enter, and it'll ask me where it is that I want to send it, and yes, it just happens that I want to send it to layout 2, so I'm going to hit enter. And here we go. I got my parent view, and I'm just going to leave it at the front. Or you know what, in this case, I could just do left. I mean, it's a block. It really doesn't have a huge difference, but I can always change the that parent view orientation. But for now, let's just leave it alone. I'm going to go back and I'm going to create my series of view bases. Hit enter. So say I wanted to actually add in that second block. I've already created these views. I don't want to have to go and redo everything. If I click on that parent and I right click, you'll see I got these three options. These are the three that we want to be paying attention to throughout this webinar. We got create view, edit view, update view. If I select update view, whoops, I'm sorry, that's not right. If I go to edit view and I hit select, it'll kick me back into the model space and it'll prompt me to select new objects that I want to be including in my view bases. So I'm going to select the second one, going to hit enter, I'm going to enter out through the command, and you can see all of my views have been updated with that new block. Now you might notice that in some cases, if you went through that process, it might not automatically be updating, and it could be because certain features are not selected. And one of the ones that we want to be aware of is if I go back to that layout tab over here under update, there's that auto update. And right now I have it off because I want to show you what will happen if that's not on, but I do make a change in my model space. And again, I want them all to be updated eventually within my layout. So if I go back to my model and say I made a change. This guy is actually that long. I'm going to hit enter. If I go back to my layout 2, oh boy, I'm seeing a lot of red. Red's usually not a good sign. What it's telling me is that, hey, there's been a change made to my model, but it's not actually being updated in these view bases. So what I can do is if I select that parent, that first one I created, right click. Well, actually the other option would be is if you clicked it, you'll see up here it's automatically updating. We got the same functionality. Just my preference is to just use the right click and to gain access to that functionality. But here you'll see that update view, and if I click on that, it gets updated. I'm going to go back and show you if I have the layout, if I have the auto update selected, and I go back and I redo that process. I'm going to go back to my layout, and then look at that. They all updated. So it's kind of one thing to be aware of. Sometimes you might be making changes and, you just want everything to be updated automatically. Go ahead and make sure that auto update is active. So I'm going to go undo everything for now. Now taking a little bit closer look at these views. The first thing you'll notice if you go ahead and select on any one of these views is we got two things that are presented to us. We got this little blue square. If I click on that, that'll essentially allow me to move it around wherever I want. The other thing is we got this downward arrow, and that'll show me a lot of scaling options that we have available. So say, we didn't like how things were scaled, we can go in there and change that. Now say I didn't want to do them all individually. I kind of want everything to be updated all in one go. If you go back to that drop down in that one particular view, you'll see that it's selected from parent. So the cool thing about that is if we want to do everything all at once, if we go to that parent view, remember that's the first one that we created. if I go to the scale options from that parent view and change those, everything gets updated correspondingly. So pretty handy. But again, you also have the ability of doing it independently for the different views if you feel that's something that you need to do. So a decent amount of flexibility for how we want to scale these things. When these are created for us, off the bat you see a series of solid line and dashed lines. And the solid lines represent those lines of our model that are visible to the naked eye, and then the dashed ones represent what are invisible to us, that we only see in X-ray, or something that's not actually outward projected. I'm going to go over to layout number 1 because I got here a little slide showing all the different options we have for our hidden lines, our visible lines. If I take a VIEWBASE and I right-click and I go to Edit View, you see one of the options is Hidden Lines. If I select that, I got these 4 options: visible, visible and hidden lines, shaded, visible lines, and shaded with visible and hidden lines. And you can see how they compare here. So if we just did the visible lines, we're only seeing those actual visible lines as indicated by the name. So everything's going to be shown with the solid lines, and that's what we could see with the naked eye. And then the visible and hidden lines together is like we saw before. And we also have these 2 options where we have the shaded option selected, and it gives a little bit a sense of realism to it. So it's just like another option that we have for us. I'm going to go back to this one here. If I go back to Edit View, just want to kind of show that we have the ability of going in and selecting things. We can scale from here. If we right-click and go to Create View, I'm going to get to these 2 options, the Section View and Detail View, a little bit later, but if I click the Projected View, I can actually take a view I've already created and I could keep going. I could keep re-projecting in different perspectives. I could kind of keep going out and out and out as much as I really wanted to. So those are some other options that we have available to us. All right, I'm going to switch over into another file here. I'm going to go over to this visibility file here. I'm going to go to the model because I want to show you a couple of other things, different way of showing models as they become more and more complicated. I'm going to start with this guy here. In this scenario, I have a cube with a cylinder, and my cylinder is bisecting my cube. And I want to present this in a report. Rather than starting this from the layout, I'm actually going to do this from the model because in this scenario I have 2 things that I'm eventually going to get to, but I really only want to show this one. So remember, if I did it from the layout, went through this process, everything in my model space is going to be shown, and then there will be the process of going and unselecting. So it's just faster to do it directly from the model space. So I'm going to type in VIEWBASE. I'm going to go to Model. I'm going to select my 2 things here, and I'm going to go, I think we can just throw this in Layout 1. I'm going to be creating my parent. And I'll just keep that orientation, hit Enter, and then I'm going to go send my projection over there. So right now you can see again we're defaulting to the hidden and invisible lines, but I don't feel this is accurately representing what I want to be showing in my report. I'd rather this be shaded with visible lines. So I'm going to make that selection, hit Enter. You'll see this interesting thing happening right now. I can see all of the visible lines, but it's really not clear to me where that plane of intersection is actually occurring. It just kind of blends one shape into the other. Well, I can adjust that. If I click on the view base, go to Edit View, I got this option down here, Visibility. And the first option I have is Interference Edges, and it'll default to No. If I turn that on to Yes, and then enter out of the command, you'll see that we've now created these lines representing where the cylinder is intersecting the cube. So very kind of handy to have. It just adds a certain degree of understanding to this model. Now, I kind of see something going on here. You know, I created this view. I want to stick it in a report, but I'm kind of seeing that there's this odd artifact going on when I had that that shaded option used for this model. We can fix that. We have the option of increasing the DPI of the shaded model. The one thing to know is that AutoCAD will default to 100 DPI for this shaded view base. And we can increase that, but we have to be aware of what we're doing before we create these. It's not retroactive. And I'll show you what we can do. There's a command in AutoCAD called VIEWBASE, and from here I can change the DPI of the model that I want. So again, it'll default to 100 DPI, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, if you're doing draft reports and you don't want to, use up a huge amount of ink, or you really don't need that high resolution option, we could increase or keep that DPI low, and then once we're at a point where we're creating these views with the intention of going to a final report or out to our clients, we can up that to 300 DPI. So this is essentially where we would do it. And again, it's important to have this set and identified before you create the view base. We have a couple of other options here. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these because a lot of this functionality is intended for models that are substantially more complicated than what we're showing here. And they also apply to inventor files, and for the sake of this webinar, we're keeping our models very simplistic for being able to present them clearly to you guys. But there are other options. The first angle would be, if you wanted to change how things were created based off of that parent, whether you're seeing things left or right or up and down, you can change those a bit. Some settings for threading. Again, we're not going to be getting into a whole lot of this, but as you guys are playing around with models that are becoming more and more complicated, you guys could definitely test out these added functionalities. But for now, let's just say we wanted that 300 DPI, so this is essentially where we would be creating that. And again, that command is VIEWBASE, and this window will pop and we could select our DPIs from there. All right. The next thing I want to show you guys is a model with a bend in it. So I just created this very simple cube, and I put a bend in it, and I want to document this. I want to create a layout that has this information on it. So again, I'm going to do ViewBase, model, select this guy, and I want this guy to go to layout 2, and there he goes. So the default is again the visible and hidden lines, but you'll see I got these two lines indicating the extent of where that bend is occurring in my model. And let me just kind of put this over to shaded with visible lines. You'll see that my view base has these lines defaulted to on, which is cool. I mean, it's great. If you want to get a better understanding of the radius of that bend, we could do that, and we got a sense of where that is starting in our model. But say we don't want that to be shown. I could right-click my view base, go back to Edit View, Visibility, and then we have this Tangent Edges. So you can see it's defaulted to yes, but if I say no, it'll disappear. So that's another cool handy thing, especially when you get into more complicated models. You know, the more lines, sometimes the more confusing things could be. But it definitely has its pros and cons. Now within that same option under visibility, there are these three other options: bend, extents, thread features, presentation trails. Now we're not going to get into these. These are primarily related to more complicated files, maybe something that's coming from Inventor. But you know, the bends would be, for an example, if you're working on sheet metal bends, the extent lines indicate the location of the transition about which a bend hinges or folds in a flattened sheet or metal view. So it's just, again, something that's more pertinent to sheet metal work. The threaded features, you know, has a lot to do with, you know, threading, and you know, it was hard to kind of come up with a presentation that was able to show you guys this stuff clearly. But again, you guys are probably working on something, you know, much more complicated than just this cube. So I highly encourage, again, you guys to play around with this stuff as much as you can and really start exploring how this is really kind of helping present your models in a succinct way. So again, we're just going to skip over that. And if you guys are super interested in learning more about these options, maybe, you know, Victoria, we could do a new webinar on it and focus on these. But speaking of somewhat boring models, I don't know, I want to see something a little bit more interesting than just a cube. And we're going to change gears here, and we're going to go into Fusion, because as you saw before, you know, we have the option of bringing in an Inventor file, specifically an IAM, IPT, or IPN file format. I want to show you guys how this can be done from Fusion. So we got this cool hand. You know, say, you know, a team member of yours is doing some modeling in Fusion, but for whatever reason your workflow has you doing the documentation and kind of report synthesis in CAD. You know, we can do that. Like I mentioned before, a lot of this functionality exists in Inventor and in Fusion, so we could do a lot of it here. But say hypothetically you need to get this into CAD and you want to create that documentation of this model. So I got my model, pretty cool looking hand, something a little bit more, I'm going to say a lot more interesting than just a bunch of cubes and cylinders. If you're in Fusion, you can go up here and you can do a save as, and you can give it a name. You can send it to a project location. I'm going to not go through this process because, you know, this is all cloud-based, so depending on the load, it might take a while, but I've gone ahead and done this. But essentially the workflow would be that you'd want to save this to a project. And then once you're done, you can go to your profile. And I'm not going to go into detail about Fusion. The webinar is primarily focusing on CAD, but I just want to kind of show you how this can be done. I'm going to go to my demo project, which is where I happen to put this. And here, my hand is actually called Raptor. And you'll see for all of the models that I have on the cloud, I got this option of this downward arrow guy. And from here, I can save to an Inventor file format. And that'll allow me to access the files in CAD that were created from this model in Fusion. So I'm going to go back to CAD. So say I've gone through that process, taken everything from the cloud, and I got it on my local machine. I want to bring that hand into CAD to start the documentation. I'm going to go to a layout. Again, layout, but this time I'm going to do from Inventor, and you're going to want to navigate to wherever that file got downloaded, and you'll see that there's a whole lot of supporting files depending on how complicated your model is. There'll be a lot of supporting files. But for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to select this final assembly IAM file format. We got a couple of options here. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time going on these, but again, we could have some different options available for bringing in these files. Definitely encourage you guys to play around with that. But I just want to get this thing in here to show you guys. I'm going to hit open, and I'm going to create my parent view there. And I'm just going to only create one ViewBase off the side here. You can kind of see we got our hand in here. Everything's looking good. And I actually want to show you quickly how confusing things could start to get the more complicated your model is. So right now we're only seeing the visible lines. But let me show you what happens if I actually opted to show visible and hidden lines. I mean, the thing is just littered with lines. I mean, we got to be careful what we're showing because, you know, we don't want someone, again, who's not overly familiar with our model to be confused. You know, we don't want that to happen. So, you know, you got to be cognizant of the amount of detail that's in our model, and we got to make sure we're presenting things appropriately. So I'm actually going to go change this to shaded with visible lines because I think it looks cool, and I think it does. But you know what? This isn't going to cut it. You know, I could create all of these different, you know, view bases, but it's really not giving my client the level of detail that they want for this particular report that I'm writing. I can start dissecting this model. I can start slicing through it. I can highlight details. I can start adding to this layout to give sense to what's going on. If I select my model, you see by default we get this drawing view option here, and the first one I want to touch on is this section. If I click on the down arrow, I got a couple of options: full, half, offset, aligned, and from object. But essentially what this functionality is allowing me to do is to slice through my model. So for example, if I selected full and I want to show, I don't know, let's say we want to go from the ring finger all the way down. And I'm going to put it over on this side here. Hit enter. What I've done is I've essentially sliced through my model. It's a cross-section view from A to A. But you know what? Say I realize, you know, this is not actually the alignment that I really wanted to show. I wanted to show actually, you know, what's going on over towards maybe the hinge component. I can move my alignment over and my profile is going to update correspondingly. So no matter where you see this vertical line, this slice, my cross-section is going to be updated correspondingly. And we have some handy, you know, annotation going on right here. So, you know, this view down here is associated with this cross-section, A to A. It's got a scale of 1 to 4. And I can modify the scale. I could, you know, update that cross-section as much as I want. And, you know, I could keep adding them. So say I want a different kind of profile. Well, we could do like a half. And the half will essentially slice through part of it, but project the other half. Let's see if I can get a good example for you here. So say I only want it to slice through half of that. You know, I just kind of put it down, out of the way. Hopefully I can make sense for you guys in a second here. So I kind of created B. You can see B kind of snakes down here, and then there's this one projected line down here. if I take that one line and I kind of go down over to my model, I'll see this is the component here that I've sliced through, but then down here on this side of the line, all this stuff is just projected view. We're not slicing through anything. I'm just kind of seeing the hand from the wrist out towards the fingers. So we can add as many of these as we want. We could move things around like I mentioned before. You know, we could dissect this thing, you know, and really help make sense of our model. So this is an example of, you know, some of the cross-section functionality that we have in here. But say you know what, I spent a lot of time working on this, you know, thumb knuckle, and you know my report's due, and I really got to explain to someone, hey, this is really worth focusing on. This is something that, you know, our updated model shows that, you know, we're on a good track here. So I want to highlight this one section here in the model. If I click on my parent view again, I can go to details, and from details I got two options, circle and rectangle. Let's just pick rectangle. I'm going to turn my snap off. So again, I want to focus and highlight what's going on in that knuckle. The first click is actually going to be the center of the square, unlike using the rectangle command in CAD. You know, you get one corner to the next. For this, it's actually starting with the center, which allows you to focus on where it is that you want to be paying attention. And I'm going to just drag out to the side. And then here, exit out of the command, I've now created a zoomed in view only of what I selected. And it's detail C. You know, the scale is 1 to 2, and you know, I could change that. You know, I can make it bigger if I really want to emphasize what's going on. You know, I could change the scale as well. So, you know what, I realized actually, you know, I didn't want to present that knuckle. I actually wanted to present, you know, this one joint in the thumb. So I can move, just like I can move that cross section, I could move the details around, and that view will update correspondingly. So again, you know, we could just keep adding these things in. We could add more details. You know, focus on that knuckle over here. And so I got my C is that thumb, D is this knuckle, and I could change that scale, blow it up a little bit, and again, just kind of keep going and creating these new views to help give sense of the model that we have. So that's pretty much what I wanted to show you guys. Again, it's really a brief introduction to some of these options that we have. You know, sorry that a lot of it was for fairly simplistic objects, but you know, it was really just to kind of show you guys in as clear and concise a way as, you know, what the functionality is. But you guys, I'm sure, are going to be working on far more complicated models. So play around with it. Encourage you to test it out, and again, it's a super convenient way of documenting the models that we're working on.
All right, Alex, that's been a great presentation so far. We have a couple of questions coming in through the chat window, so we might share a couple of those now, and when we get close to the top of the hour, we'll run the final poll and show you guys a couple of resources. Before I ask the questions, though, I did want to say so the hand model that you're showing there is actually a prosthetic hand that Autodesk and a company called e-nable worked on together. And I popped the link to that in the chat window if you want to read a little bit about it. It's a very cool project, and you can download the 3D model and play with it. We'll also zip these up and provide you with the files so that you can play with them. You can find them in the box folder that we usually put all the data sets in. But again, if you want to go directly to the site, I think they have other models of the hands as well. Anyway, it's a really cool project. So are you ready for a couple of questions?
Bring them on.
All right. So the first question we have is, let's see. You said that you could modify the section view labels. Can you add, could you demo how to, let's see, can you modify the labels at all? Is that something that you could show, or for instance, can you make the arrows smaller, that sort of thing? I think they're associated with the scale, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. It's actually something that I haven't played around with too much, but looks like we've click it. Let's see. That's the line scale. I mean, it looks like we can change, for example, if we wanted to change the A to A prime, we could do that. If I changed the scale, is that going to actually impact? Well, the arrows stay consistent. That's a good question, though.
We might be able to demo this in a short video afterwards. I know that we hadn't planned on making any modifications to the arrows or the text, but I did see a couple of questions in there about maybe like customizing that text. So afterwards, maybe we'll record a short screencast and share that out if we have time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we got things that we can't address right now, I mean, we'd be more than willing to post to YouTube. And one of the things that I'm actually noticing here is, in my background, if you had like a profile, it never made sense A to A. It invariably was like A to A prime, so it actually gave a direction to the profile that you're creating. In CAD, everything is in line, so even though we have A to A or A prime to A prime, if I actually took my model and created lines out to where the projected view bases were, you can see that everything's in line. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's a way of modifying the labels so that each end of it is unique. And if you wanted to do additional annotation, what our options are for that. But yeah, that's definitely something that we could try to figure out for you guys, and I'll throw that up on YouTube.
Excellent. Yeah, I think a follow-up video would be good for that particular topic there. Related, somebody's asking, can you add dimensions to the views? And I see that Nauman already answered that. Nauman, did you want to chime in and speak up about that? If not, I can definitely say something. But we haven't heard from you yet.
Dimensioning and everything, and if you want 3D dimensioning, either you'll have to use the 3D OSNAP feature.
I'll start, and if you want to interrupt me, you can. All right. So you can dimension the views. It's you can use the regular dimension tools, and the 3D object snaps are what you'll want to use there. So not just your regular 2D ones, but the 3D object snaps will work to get you those accurate dimensions.
Can you show them where that might be?
All right. What else do we have here? Let's see.
It's in the status bar. You might not have it turned on. Or you can type in 3D OSNAP.
Hey, Nauman, are you talking? If you are, sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, I am so sorry. I guess I was trying to talk, but I guess it didn't work out too well. So, yes,
Nauman,
I was trying. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, sorry, if you're talking, I'm having a really hard time talking. But guys, if you have questions that we're not getting to us right now, we'll definitely address them. And again, if it warrants kind of going into greater detail with this presentation, we could definitely do that. And this was really intended to be a quick introduction to a lot of this functionality, but we could do a whole new webinar and go the next step, basically building up on this as well.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of notes. It looks like you can control the dimensions and the annotations by style. Again, that's something that we're not going to really get into in the live presentation here. But if you understand text styles, and if you don't, you can go back into the into some of the previous webinars on styles and take a look at that. You should be able to control these based on your annotation styles. All right, next question here. We have, will the model documentation work for old 3D face or 3D surfaces? If it does, it would help out when users import SketchUp models. I'm really not sure. All of the objects that we used today were solids, so these are 3D solids. Actually, if we have a couple minutes, I'll take control of the screen. We'll do a quick experiment. Just know that I didn't prepare this ahead of time, so if it does not work, I'm sorry for that. We'll go a little rogue. So I'll share my screen and get my AutoCAD open. I'll use one of these basic ones. Okay, so from here, let's go back into model space. And I'm just going to take one of these cubes, right-click on it, and where's my... All right, we'll do conv2. Okay, convert to surface. Okay, so now I have a, just verify this in the properties. I now have a surface, and we'll go back into our layout. And just to make sure this isn't a fluke, I will use the VIEWBASE command and get everything in model space and place this here. And it does look like it works on surfaces. And what was the... Yeah, so that it works the same way that it does on solids. What was the second part of that question? 3D faces. Let me see, because if we explode this surface, I believe it'll make a series of faces. No, one more time. Explode. No. Okay. We'll just do 3D face. Okay. There we go. And we'll try this again. VIEWBASE. Model space. So it looks like it does not work on the 3D faces, but it does work on surfaces. So as far as working with, I'm not overly familiar with SketchUp models, the particulars of it, but if you can get that model into surface instead of 3D face, that would be the best way to go about that, I think. Maybe that's another quick thing that we can do. Let's just check one more time here. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left. I would like to run a couple of quick polls and show you guys, or I'm sorry, just the last poll. I promise it's the last one. We would like to know, did you learn something new today? So we hope we taught you something new. There's some exciting things here. If you've used it before, I hope there are a couple of quick tips and tricks in there. Oh, I did want to note that, you know the auto update that you mentioned, Alex? If you're working on really complicated models, a lot of people will turn that off because it does cause a performance lag as you as your model gets more complicated. So a lot of people prefer to manually update their model. That's why that feature is able to be turned off. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that poll out. 100% of people learned something new here. All right. That is fantastic news. We're glad to hear it. So I'll hide that poll. Just going to go back into my presentation here. Okay, so here are some additional resources that we'll provide to you. There's just a couple links to model documentation in AutoCAD, some commands, some additional commands for working with that model, your drawing views, and then an AU class from 2013 that goes into detail about model documentation. And I will actually add that link to the Raptor hand as well into this, so if you want to download it, you'll have the link there. All right, so again, send us your feedback, autodesk.help.webinars@autodesk.com. Make sure you put Build Your AutoCAD IQ into the subject line, because we do have series for other products like Revit and Maya and simulation and all that. So we're pretty good about answering the emails, so send us any additional questions you have and we'll be happy to chat with you. Other than that, I think we're just about finished. So unless we have any last minute questions here, guys. All right. Well, it's been great working with you, and we hope to see you back next week. All right. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.